Hi, I'm Abby Paige Stevens, and thank you for joining me here on Stitchin' with Abby. I'm here to share with you all of the latest and greatest projects that we have coming for you here at Stitchin Heaven. Today's project is called Dump Cake, and it's a sweet recipe of scrappy fabrics and half square triangles that get mixed into all sorts of shapes and patterns. So come on and join me and let's get stitchin'. Thanks for joining me today as I get to share with you this new fun project that we have for you here at Stitchin Heaven. As always, I ask you to please hit the subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so that you can keep up on all that's happening here at Stitchin Heaven. Today's project, as I mentioned, is called Dump Cake, and it's a really fun way to use these cake mix recipes. So these are papers, I've got a few out here, that you can layer on top of 10-inch squares, and you sew around them in a certain pattern and then cut them apart, and then you get all of these half square triangles that you can arrange in many different ways. So these are called from Miss Rosie's Quilt Co, and Moda distributes these. We're using cake recipe number 7. She has several different cake mixes available, but we use these particular 5 blocks on the front of the packet here for this project. It's really fun to take these units and then rearrange them in lots of different ways, twist and turn, and you get all of these different block layouts, which makes for a really fun and exciting quilt. The reason we call this dump cake is because we just take a little bit of all these scrappy fabrics and turn everything every which way, and then we end up with this really yummy, fun quilt. To get started building our blocks, we are going to want to start out by selecting for each block 2 different fabrics, and we want them to contrast in either texture. So here I have like kind of a large bold print and then a smaller, more tight, like blender type print, or we want them to vary in value. So I've got a darker and like a medium value here. And then we're going to pair that with our background fabric. So for this particular quilt, we have chosen this really subtle, it's almost like a seafoam green, that just really adds some pizzazz to this quilt. You are going to be making each block twice. So here you can see that I've got a block here, and then over here I have the same block. So each block will be made twice. So you'll start out with 2 of each print. So you can see I've got 2 squares here, and then you'll start with 4 of the background squares. And again, these are 10-inch squares. We will have kits available for this project here in the store, and everything will come, or at least your 10-inch squares will come pre-cut for you. So that will help save on some cutting time, which is fun. So what we're gonna start with is we are going to take one of our prints and a background square, and we're going to layer them together, right sides together, just like that. And then we are going to take our paper, and you can see it's the same size as the squares. It doesn't need to be lined up exactly perfectly because we're going to be cutting and trimming all of this out once it's sewn. I am going to stick a couple of pins in here to hold this all together as I take it to the sewing machine. We're going to be sewing along the dashed lines here. So as you're putting pins in, try to be aware of those sewing lines and try to keep your pins out of the way. Okay, once I have that all layered together and pinned, I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and again I'm going to start sewing along the dashed lines, and there's arrows here that tell you which way to go, and there's also numbers that tell you where to start. So I've got number 1, so I'm going to start going this direction, and then I'm going to flip around and I'm going to sew down the other direction. So you can see here as I'm starting to sew that I've got my needle stitching exactly on the dotted line or the dashed line. And And I'm following the directions of the arrows. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to lift my needle and my foot, and I'm just going to flip it around. I'm not even going to bother cutting threads. And go down the other side. And then we'll repeat that. Okay, then up here in this section, you really want to pay attention to the order of the numbers because we're going to do a lot of pivoting. So I'm going to come to a point here. I'm going to leave my needle down and just raise the foot and pivot and continue on. And then at this end, I need to lift both the foot and the needle. Gonna pivot again. All right, I have finished my stitching here on my papers and my fabrics. I'm going to remove my pins, and now we get to cut this apart. So the cutting lines are these solid lines. So you'll cut around the perimeter and then you'll cut down the center of these areas. So I think that I'm going to start by just kind of slicing this in half along one of these edges. Okay, and turn that around and get the other side. I really like these squares because it's basically paper piecing. And by the time we're cutting this, we're going to have all of these little half square triangles in a fraction of the time. And they're incredibly precise because we've had those lines to follow as we've done our stitching. All right, when I get to these smaller cuts, I'm gonna switch over to my little Stitchin Heaven ruler. It's one of my favorite tools. It just is much less bulky to handle. So if it'll reach across something that I need to cut, I always grab it. Okay, so I've kind of got these cut into squares, and now I'm gonna start cutting them down into their units. So now I need to cut these little guys in half. All right, I have all of my units cut apart now, and we're ready to start peeling the paper off of the back of these. Now, before I started sewing here, I did turn down my stitch length. I actually turned it all the way down to 1.85. Then that way we have more perforations in the paper and it's easier to tear away. So we're just gonna take just a second here and pull those out. See how easy that just came off? And these papers are a little bit thinner than like normal computer paper, so they're really easy to get off of here. Another reason that we lower our stitch length is because as we're tearing at the ends of these, the stitching, if we left it at a longer stitch length, it may want to pull away, like pull our stitching away. Like you can see there that I lost a stitch right there. So having that shorter stitch length will help keep those intact. So now I have all of these half square triangles that need to be pressed. So I'm gonna take these over to the pressing mat. When we press open half square triangles, we are going to press toward the printed side. And I always like to give them a little bit of a finger press first, and then I press directly down. I try not to slide the iron around a whole bunch because we don't want to distort these triangles in any way. So I'm just giving a quick press to make sure that that seam is completely open, that I'm not creasing any of the fabric beyond the seam. And I'm going to keep sewing or pressing through these, and I'll be right back with you. All right, I've got my half square triangles all pressed and ready to go. We need to repeat this entire process with our second print. So this was our kind of large, bold print with darker colors. And now we're going to do it with our like smaller blender print, and it's in a lighter color. So I'm going to pair one of these squares with a background fabric, right sides together. And then I'm going to repeat the same process. I'll pin my paper on, get it all through the sewing machine, get it all cut apart and pressed open, and then I will be back to show you how these units all come together. All right, I've got my second print all sewn and cut out, and my units are ready to start sewing together. So for this particular block with these fabrics in the pattern, we are going to be following block number 1 here. So the cool thing about these papers is that you end up with 4 larger half square triangles. And then, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you end up with 16 of these small triangles. And when you arrange these small ones all together, they fit with these 4, and so they all get to be used. So we are going to start by arranging our dark one with the dark point facing out, and then we'll do one in the opposite corner with the lighter fabric facing out, and then we'll do the mirror image below, and then we will have 4 of these in the center. Okay, so we've utilized all of our large half square triangles, and now we're going to start arranging our smaller ones. So these get to be sewn together in these little 4-patch units. So I'm just referencing my pattern here. So this is going to go this way. So I've arranged these so that we get these like little hourglass shapes. And I'll do that again, but this time it's going to kind of face in the opposite direction. So I think I'm going to start by sewing together all of my little 4-patch units here to make these hourglass shapes. And then once those are all sewn together, I can sew them all the same. Like you can see that this is just the same as this, it's just been rotated. And so I'm going to do the same thing and make 8 of these hourglass. I'm gonna call it an hourglass unit because it's got two hourglasses in it. And so we'll start out by sewing along that edge and along that edge. And for these units, we have a lot of seams that are coming together. And so I'm going to go ahead and press these open to try to reduce the bulk the best that I can. At some point, we're probably going to be using a stiletto and just taking our time and being patient to get through some of these seams. All right, so there I've got those units put together, and so now I'm going to flip that over and we will sew right there to join those. And here we have our little hourglass unit. I'm going to press that seam open as well. And there we have it. So we're going to make 8 of those, and I've already pieced all of those together here. And so these are going to get arranged. Here we have the darker, larger print, and it's going to match the darker, larger print here. And then the next one, we're going to have facing this way. So now we have, so these two are spun kind of perpendicular to each other. So we're gonna have a dark print, a light print, a light print, and then we're gonna alternate a dark print and a light print. Going down the sides here, it will be the similar thing. Our light prints here are gonna match in the middle. So we're gonna have all these little light triangles meeting each other on the outer edges here. So now we need to start just sewing all of these units together. So I'm gonna start by sewing these units all into rows. So I'm gonna get that done, and then we'll sew the rows all together, and I will show you the finished block. These seams, I'm actually not going to press the seams open. I am going to press them towards the half square triangle. We've got a lot of bulk going on here where these corners come together, and so that seam kind of wants to naturally lay in that direction, so I'm gonna let it do its thing. There are a lot of things here in this block that need to be oriented in a certain direction, and so as I'm piecing, I always come back and I lay it back out the way the block needs to go, so that I make sure that everything comes together. I do want to point out to you, so if I pull these kind of out into little 4-patch units, this unit here is this unit here on the block. So you can see that all of the different arrangements that you can make out of all of these half square triangles to get different shaped blocks. I'm going to actually go ahead and piece these into little 4-patch units rather than in rows, because I want to show you how turning these around will actually give you even another option for a block. So I'm going to flip these all over like this, and then we'll stitch along each of these lines in the center. All right, I've got my 4, what I would call like subunits sewn together. I'm gonna take these over here to the pressing mat, and these seams will be pressed open. I have all of these units sewn together, and they're ready to be arranged and sewn into the completed block, which looks like this. So we have this hourglass unit in the center, alternating fabrics pointing outwards. However, there's another block in this quilt that uses the same unit using different fabrics, and if we rotate them like so, you can see that we end up with a completely different block, which is so fun to do in this quilt. That's why I love these cake mix recipes, because there's so many options and ways that you can use them. I'm going to go ahead and orient these back the way they're supposed to go for this particular block. And I will get these sewn together and we'll show you the finished block. And here we have it. We have one finished block. So I hope that you are able to take this technique and apply it to all of the rest of these blocks here in the quilt. When you purchase the kit, the pattern will be in the kit and it's colored so that you can follow the arrangements of the exact fabrics here in the pattern. It's all the same technique. You're sewing all these half square triangles. It's just a matter of how you arrange them and how you turn them, of how they come together and the designs that they make. It's been really fun to share this project with you. I hope it's something that you enjoy. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, and I will see you next time. Bye.